Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you folks doing tonight? We're going to do something a little bit different, and we are now streaming on YouTube. A place I didn't think I was actually going to do, but here we are back on YouTube. Something I never thought I would be doing again. But times change, people change, and so here we go. Anywho, uh, for those who are joining me, welcome. If you're new here, welcome to Contemptible Thoughts, uh, a channel and a show where we kind of talk about some of the more niche topics that are out there. Um, and with that being said, tonight we're going to be talking about the United Nations and the UN Charter. And we're going to see if this charter that was developed in 1945 still holds today. It still it's worse, and people still doing things that they should be. That being said, there's a few things that we need to do. First things first, the most important thing that we need to know is who signed the United Nations Declaration of Rights, or should better of, who's part of it. So let's show that. Let's show who is there. Okay, here we go. We're going to go to Wikipedia. United Nations. Obviously, United Nations, particularly informally referred to as the United Nations Organization (UNO), is an intergovernmental organization whose stated purpose is to maintain international peace, security, develop friendly relations amongst nations, and achieve international cooperation, and be the center of harmonizing the actions of nations. All right, as you can see in our lovely world of Wikipedia, you're going to see that most countries are part of it. Right? 193 member nations, 2 UN Assembly observer states, that being Vatican City and the state of Palestine, two eligible non-member states, Cook Island and Niue, and 17 non-governmental territories. Obviously, Antarctica is not part of it, as it is part of the Antarctic Treaty. So, when you look at it, most countries in the world, and you're going to see, we're going to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. You're going to see that most countries are part of this organization. That pretty much every single one of these countries are here, uh, which is kind of interesting because of what that does. So we're just going to continue. Look at that. Look at that. Every single country, or at least most countries, actually. Let's see if there's some of the more less known. Is Kosovo here? I don't think Kosovo is here. But then again, it may be part of Albania. So we'll see. Anyhow, so moving on from that, we're going to go to this lovely document right here, the UN Declaration of Rights. And I want to use the website, but every time you do it, it does things that are kind of weird. So I thought I'd just pull the PDF file that they have, and we could look at it right here and follow along if you wish. As you can see, UN Declaration of Human Rights. Preamble. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and unalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind. And that's interesting. We have the word mankind and human. Interesting topic for today. Anyways, moving on. And the advent of a world in which human, or is that word again, human, being shall enjoy freedom of speech and the belief and freedom from fear and want and what has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. Whereas it is essential to promote the development of friendly relations between nations. Whereas the people of the United Nations have in the Charter reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and the worth of human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and are determined to promote social progress and better standards of life and larger freedom. Whereas member states have pledged themselves to achieve in cooperation with the United Nations to promote a universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Whereas the common understanding of these rights and freedoms is of great importance for the full realization of this pledge. Now, therefore, the General Assembly proclaims that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations. Now, what's interesting, we are all peoples, all nations. Are all nations included to this? No, but this is going to be all nations who are currently signed to be part of it. So this basically said every nation that is currently part of the United Nations has agreed to this. We're going to get further into what these rights are and determine if that be the case. Anyways, moving on to the end, to the end that every individual and every organ of society, keeping this declaration constantly in mind, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, and by progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance, both among the peoples of member states themselves and amongst the people of territories under jurisdiction. So, what have we learned so far? What we're going to see right now is what we're going to see here is that something very curious. Something very, very curious indeed. And the curious thing we got here right now is, do every single nation who is part of the United Nations agree to this? Have they follow through on it? Have they guaranteed certain rights to people that would otherwise their culture, their religion, their own individual situation would allow? We shall see. But let's continue. All right, here we go. Article 1. Now, this is going to be very interesting when you consider how each country recognizes its own people. Each one is slightly different. So, Article 1. All human beings are born free and equally in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards another in spirit of brotherhood. Now, this is very interesting. We know a lot of countries have their own way of doing things in regards to how they regard the populace. Okay. Um, Slavery is still a thing in certain countries. Serfdom is also a thing in certain places. The idea of all peoples being equal and free is also varies depending on where you are. See, in certain countries like India, there is still a caste system. So they may not be considered equal. They may have their own class, their own caste, right? In other places, slavery or things of that nature, how they treat, say, minors or women or religious minorities or cultural minorities may be very, very different. So I find it very interesting. We're hitting the first article, and we're supposed to recognize that every single country, all 190 plus countries, do they follow this first article to a T? Most likely not. Most likely not. Article 2. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, religion, language, political, or other option, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political jurisdiction or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or any other limitation of sovereignty. So, what does this mean? It means it doesn't matter. It does not matter what you're doing or what you say, how you do things, who you talk to, how you refer to people. Everybody's free. Okay, everybody is free. Everybody has the right to themselves. They are all sovereign individuals. It doesn't matter what your country says. Doesn't matter what the international community does. It just does not matter. If you have signed this charter, if your country, once again, over 190 plus countries have signed this in some form or another, in some point or another, if they have signed this, they are all saying that it does not matter what your race, color, sex, religion, language, political opinions, your social origins, your property status, your birth status, anything, any reason that they may say that in the eyes of the United Nations, you are a free, sovereign individual with your own rights. Is this how it actually works in reality? No, not really. Not really. It depends on where you are and how these countries treat you. Because here's the catch, right? It's all well and good if an international community says these things, but how a particular nation operates and how their local interactions are. Like if you're in New York, what you're experiencing is going to be different if you're in Paris or London or Moscow or Beijing or Tokyo or Mexico City or Timbuktu or Cape Town or Auckland or Rome. You get the idea. Each place is going to treat an individual very different from the other. Now, with that being said, the international community says that every person is free, independent, and has their own liberty. Is that how this works? Not really. Moving on. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the security of person. Once again, my previous comment. Does that actually happen? No, it does not. It is not enforced. And another curious thing about this whole thing is look at what the UN has done, right? We'll go into different organizations that the UN are part of. We're just going to go over these articles first. But keep in mind how the UN does things and the organizations that are part of the UN, right? It's very important that we look at that because this will be very important going forward. All right. All right. Article 4. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all forms. Does that happen? No. Keep in mind. Here is a very good example. Okay. In 2011, I believe it was, Libya was in the process of a civil war, which eventually caused the death of Muammar Gaddafi and the collapse of the Libyan government. When that happened, Libya eventually had slavers go into that nation. Now, are those slavers and are those groups part of the UN? That's a big gray because the government of Libya signed it. But did these individuals in this part find also a part of it? It's hard to say. Article 5. No one shall be subject to torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. No comment. Does that happen? Yeah, it does happen, right? Torture, cruel and inhuman, degrading treatment, and poor punishment has happened, and it's not just one country. It's not another country. It's many countries use some form of torture, some form of cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment in some shape or form. We have seen that in things of different countries and the war crimes they have committed since then, or what they have done in the judiciary systems that they have, how some places, how they get confessions from people. It can in some cases it gets very very ugly. So I don't think that's being followed. Article 6. Everyone has a right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Which law? That is the question. Which law are we talking? Natural law? Are we talking maritime law? What law is this referring to? Because the law is a very general term which can mean, which can cover multiple different places. It could be national law, it could be local law, it can be international law. Which law are we talking about? I do not know. So apparently, we have the right to to right to recognition about this, but that's neither here nor there. Article 7: Are all are equal before the law and are entitled, without any discrimination, to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violence of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. We don't see that. Being an American, that is not the case. Okay. There is still discrimination. Now, I'm not talking about discrimination on in the LGBT aspect of things or anything like that. I'm just talking about this in the aspect that people do deal with discrimination. Okay. People deal with discrimination in the aspect of people with disabilities, physical, mental, psychological. there are people who are discriminated. And how exactly, once again, we're talking about before the law. What law? Once again, where does this law come from? What law are we referring to? We just said the law. What law? National, local, international. There are multiple different types of law. We just don't know which one they are referring to. All right. Article 8. Everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for the acts violating the fundamental rights granted to him by the Constitution or by law. I'm assuming when they talk about the Constitution in this aspect, we're not talking about, say, the United States Constitution or any other country's constitution. We are most likely talking about the UN Charter in this situation. And once again, what law, but still, um, competent national tribunals, right? We didn't even go to courts. We went right to tribunals. Now, remember, tribunals are different than courts. They have their own way they operate with one another, unless there is a distinction of what that means by a tribunal. And one of the big ways that's maybe determined is to ask yourself, what are we talking about, right? What do they mean when they say tribunal? Because we have two very different groups, right? We have are we talking about the traditional tribunal, which is not ran like a court? Tribunals and courts are different because a tribunal has a magistrate overseeing things. In a court, you have a judge, and they have two very different ways they operate. A court will operate different than a tribunal because there are different rules of how they operate with one another. Now, once again, this will depend on what country you're from and how local law treats them. But for argument's sake, a tribunal is different than a court. And tribunals have to follow the law, but they do not make the law in most countries because most countries have a legislative branch, and an executive branch whose job is to make and enforce the laws, and then you'll have a judiciary that will be dealing with it. So once again, it really, really, really depends on who you're talking to and how that particular independent country operates. No one shall be subject to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. This is Article 9. Okay? No one shall be subject to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. We have seen this on multiple occasions in the last, I don't know, 3 years, 2 years. Um, Maybe very, very controversial of me of saying. So do bear with me, but when it comes to Article 9, if we're dealing with this, and say the United States is part of the United Nations and the United Nations is in New York, uh, J6, right? J6, arbitrary arrest, detention, and exile. There are people there who have never actually had a proper trial. They have never been properly tried whatsoever, which violates the UN Charter, but also violates their own constitutional rights within the United States. So that's just one aspect of things. It could be very different depending on how each country operates, once again, but once again, this is something that is also very gray. So, yeah. Article 10. Everyone is entitled in full equality to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal in the determination of his rights and obligations and of any criminal charge against them. So, if you're in the United States, what does this mean to us? Well, it's very similar to when we have our constitutional rights, which talks about a quick and speedy trial. We have the right to an attorney. We have the to uh, right to not have cruel and unusual punishment, things like that. Basically, the UN's reinforcing that that is how that works. And once again, I'm very concerned. What do they mean by tribunal in Article 10? Impartial tribunal. Are we actually talking about a magistrate or are we talking about a judge? Once again, two very different things. I know keep on ramming that down everybody's throats, but that is very important to make that distinction as, once again, they operate very differently. Okay. Article 11. Everyone charged with a penal offense has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, according to the law, in a public trial, in which he has had all the guarantees necessary for his defense. Once again, interesting. I'm basically going to be interjecting in every single one at this point. I'm not trying to, but it seems that we're gone to that point. So, this has just been a very interesting situation. Moving on to this next thing, right? Everyone's charged with that, right? Uh, what can we make of this? Well, let's continue our Article 11, Part 2, which says no one shall be held guilty of any penal offense on the account of any act or omission which did not constitute a penal offense under national or international law at the time when it was committed, nor shall a heavier penalty be imposed than the one that was applicable at the time of the penal offense was committed. So, our part two is basically saying, uh, you are not going to be guilty. You are innocent until proven guilty. Article 11 basically says you are innocent until proven guilty, and then the defense has everything that they have to prove innocence in a court of law. This would include, in the United States, in this situation, Brady material, exculpatory evidence that is not generally part of this, but does still provide some evidence that the defense may be innocent. Okay, that is what this is saying. Every person is innocent until they are proven guilty in a court of law, whether it be a local court or international court, and that everything has to be done to protect the innocent. Article 12. I think this is getting interesting if you ask me. How curious how this is all kind of working out. But you know what? That's life. Them breaks. Oh well. We shall see. Moving on. Article 12. No one shall be subjected to the arbitrary interference of his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honor or reputation. Everyone has the right to the protection of the law against such interference or attacks. Essentially, essentially what they're saying is that an individual has the right to privacy, and that's what they're saying. You have the right to privacy, and you also are protected against any type of attack that may go against that, right? If somebody is going to interfere and is going to make you in a situation where it is considered a attack on one's privacy, you are protected by international law. Does that happen? Eh, that's a great one. Article 13. This is an interesting one. This is very, very important. Look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. Number one, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. In this situation, a state is going to be is going to be used interchangeably with like the words country and nation. State is just another general term that just means country or nation. Part two, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. You have the right to leave. You have the right to return. You have the right to residency. Have we seen issues with this? Yes. Yes, we have. Okay. Let's go back to the early 2020s, right? The beginning of the pandemic. Okay. Countries around the world were giving um, reasons why a person could not come back, whether it be their medical status, whether it be an immigration reason, there's a whole bunch of different reasons. And according to the UN Charter, those things shouldn't exist. A person should be allowed to leave. A person should be allowed to come in. That person should be allowed to have residency. So long, obviously, they are following the law. Otherwise, once again, that could be thrown out the window. But as long as they're following the law, they're being lawful, there should be no problem. They're using the proper port of entry. They're following the local laws. They're not getting in trouble. There should be no issues. But what have we seen? People have been stopped, been questioned, detained for these different things. So that should be interesting. Let's go to number 14. How many FU do we have here? We have 30. We're up to 14. So we're about halfway there. Everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution, and right may not be invoked in the case of prosecution generally arising from a non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Okay, this is also very, very important. This is very, very important. Okay. And the reason why this is very important is very clear. You have the right to go to another country and ask for asylum. You do not have the right to ask for asylum. It is not considered a worthy reason. If you have a true, legitimate reason to commit or ask for asylum, meaning religious persecution or some other form of persecution that may cause some harm to you, then a country is required to grant you asylum with reasonable accommodations. If that is not the case, that is not the reason why you're doing this. You do not have the right to asylum. And you have the right, you have to go to the country you're trying to enter and follow the process that's required to enter that country legally. If they do not do that, then they cannot get proper asylum. And if they're doing things that are against the UN, as in what is in this Declaration of Rights in the UN Charter, if it's against that and opposite to it, then you can't get it because you're not doing things for genuine reasons. Number 15, everyone has the right to a nationality, and no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. This is this one's more straightforward. You have the right to nationality. You have the right to have a home country. And no one's allowed to deprive you of having a home country. And there's also should be no reason why that some organization or entity shall deprive you of the ability to change your nationality. So let's say I want to change my nationality from being an American to being Canadian. So long as I'm following proper procedure, laws, regulations, things like that, then there should be no issue that I would want to change my nationality from American to Canadian, for example. So long as I'm following the rules, following the laws of both countries and how that works, there should be no issue. If they are having issue, we may have ourselves a problem. They may be violating this particular article. Article 16. This is a long one. Men and women. We are now in the 21st century, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the 20th century. Men and women. Right? It's not just men, it is men and women. Men and women of full age. So we're in this case in full age is in most countries going to be the age of 18. That is universal suffrage in most countries. 18 is in most countries you are considered an adult. You are at the age of majority in most countries. Continuing, without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion, to have the right to marry and found a family. They are entitled to equal rights as to marriage, during marriage, and to its dissolution. Marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intended spouses. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by societies and the state. I need to really, really emphasize the importance on this one. The UN is basically saying, in every single country who has signed this, is basically saying that the fundamental backbone, the keystone, if you will, of society, of the state, of society is the family unit. It is saying that the family unit is the keystone to everything. And on top of that, that people can only enter this if they are both consensual. There is no such thing as being married by force, and there is no limitation by race, nationality, or religion. Right? I find it interesting. This is really only talking about heterosexual relations. This is not talking about anything else like that. This is just talking about a man and a woman. I find it interesting there's never been an amendment to this, as that is a topic of modern conversation pieces. But you know what? We're still saying the family unit is incredibly important in here. This means that the family unit is and shall be a fundamental group unit. Moving on. Article 17. Everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. It's self-explanatory. You have the right to property. Now, it's going to be interesting. There are a lot of different countries that I could think of where the ownership of property is a little bit controversial, especially when you get into countries that are more collectivist in nature, right? Your countries that have some form of socialist policies. Property is not one thing that they allow an individual to have. That is just how that philosophy operates. So I find it very interesting. And again, you have Most countries follow this, and you have countries that are socialistic in nature that do not allow individual property. But this basically says individuals ought to have property. So I find that interesting. Article 18. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes the freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, or observance. You have the right to religion. You have the right to conscience. You have the right to thought. You have the right to change your opinion. You have the right to change your beliefs. You have the individual right to have these things. No one can change that. No one can alter that from you. But that's that. It's very, very important to think about that. Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion, expression. This right includes the freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media, regardless of its frontiers. You have the right, it says it right there, you have the right to opinion or expression. This kind of continues on Article 18. Right to speech, right to uh, hold opinions. Does this also include, and this is where like, my thought process goes to this, right? In uh, Utah, I believe it's Salt Lake City, the UN had an event, and you had security members of the UN say that this was a UN compound and certain local laws don't apply. Well, you do apparently by the UN Charter have the right to freedom of opinion or expression, and to impart, to receive and impart information and ideas through any media or regardless of frontiers. So, even by the UN, you should be allowed to do these things, even if you're video recording, whether you're producing photography, you're sketching, you're texting, it doesn't matter. These things are protected. But apparently, in this situation in the Salt Lake City, and I think this was 2018. I may be wrong. They said we were talking about a compound. These things don't apply. They do apply. The UN Charter, the UN Declaration of Rights clearly shows that they should be following that. And they were violating an individual's international rights. Not to mention that if they were in Utah, they're in the United States, and thus we have the right to these things in our First Amendment. Now, we could talk about extraterritorial rights, but we're not going to with this round. We are going to continue. Article 20. Everyone has the right to peaceful assembly, association, and no one can be compelled to belong to an association. Why is this important? Well, obviously, you have the right to assembly. That's important. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. To belong to an association. This means a government or organization of that government cannot force any individual to be part of it, whether it be a party, an organization, or a foundation. It doesn't matter. You cannot be forced. And I think I know you know exactly where I'm going when I say this. Obviously, we're talking about, say, um, places like CCP, where you are compelled to join it. And we have other countries which have similar situations. You are required to be part of it for national reasons or stuff like that. That shouldn't be the case, but it is. In some cases, it is. It really is. Article 21. Everyone has the right to take part in government of his country, directly or through the freely chosen representatives. Everyone has the right to equally access the public service of the country. The will of the people shall be the basis of the government or the authority of government, and this shall be expressed periodically, and genuine elections shall be universal, and equal suffrage shall be held by secret vote or by equivalent free voting procedures. I find this highly ironic. Article 21 is highly ironic. The reason being is that this is saying that every single country has to be a country with democratic features. That does not happen in every country. We still have absolute monarchies where every position is controlled by the monarch. We have single party states where they may have elections, but they're not exactly free elections. And they're not exactly genuine. Just think of that for a second. Article 22. Everyone has a member of society, has the right to Social Security, and is entitled to the realization through national effort, international cooperation, and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state, of the economic, social, and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality. I have no idea how to start with this. The only thing I'm going to say with this is you have the right to culture, right? You have the right to economic, social, and cultural rights, as this says. You cannot be forced to do other things. What is considered culturally, socially, and economically right, so long as it doesn't destroy an individual. That's all I'm going to go with that because it's more complicated than that, and I can't think exactly how far you want to go with this. So we won't. Article 23. Everyone has the right to work, free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and the protection against unemployment. Everyone without discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family the existence of worthy of human dignity, and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Everyone has the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of their interests. You have the right to work. You have the right to be employed. You have the right to leave employment. You have the right to create unions. You have the right to not be discriminated for any reason, to not have situations where you are arbitrarily given less money if you're doing the same work. This is wholly economic by nature. 24. Everyone has the right to rest in leisure, including reasonable limitations of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. Essentially, they cannot kill you with employment. Right? You have not worked to the point where it is hazardous to one's health. Right? They cannot do these things to you. But there are many places where they have sweatshops where they work like this. And we have places where they do a lot of these things. So I just find it interesting that these things. Moving on. We're down to the last five. Article 25. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children are born in or out of wedlock should enjoy the same social protections. You have the right to have you have the right to dignity, regardless of your employment status, regardless if you were born in or out of wedlock, regardless if you're old, infirm, widowed, ill, unemployed. You have the right to dignity. Article 26. This is going to be an interesting one considering the current topics of the day regarding education. Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory, required, mandatory. You must have it. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit, not on money, not on influence, but merit. Merit is the key word here. Merit. Education shall be free here, right? Free in many countries means that you have paid for it, but it's free in the fact that you can go to it. It is mostly paid through taxpayer funds or in some other similar way. Education shall be directed to the fully development of the human personality and to the strengthening and respect of human rights and the fundamental freedoms. It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship amongst all nations, racial, and religious groups, and shall further advance the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. Education should be used for the betterment of society, and it should be used for the idea of understanding how all of our different cultures and nations work with one another. Essentially, parents have the prior right to choose what kind of education that shall be given to their children. This is a very interesting because this is what a lot of parental rights groups say nowadays. They have the right to choose where their children go. That may be public school, a private school, such as, say, a Catholic school, or to a charter school, or to a Montessori school. Right? You have the right to choose. Article 27. Everyone has the right to freely participate in cultural life of the community, enjoy the arts, and share scientific advancement and its benefits. Everyone has the right to protection of the moral and material interests resulting in any scientific, literary, or artistic protection of which he is the author. You have the right to culture. You have the right to benefit of technological progress. That's basically what it says. 28, we're down to the very bottom. Everyone is entitled to social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. What we have said should be followed. Article 21 is saying everything up and down has to be followed. Article 29. Everyone has the duties to community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. The exercise of his rights and freedoms shall be subject only to such limitations as are determined by law solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others. The meeting of such requirements of morality, public order, and general welfare in a democratic society. These rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. This is basically saying what I said before. You must follow these rules. If you do not, you are in violation of the charter that you just signed. And number 30. Article number 30. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for a state or group or person any right to engage in any activity or perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of these rights, freedoms set forth herein. Okay, what does this say? Well, you have to follow these things. You just can't break things because you want to. That's what it says. That is what that says. That is the UN Declaration of Rights. Let's take a quick look one more time to this. 1 sec. Once again, we are going to, I'm right here showing the member states. This is every single member state. In fact, let's take a field trip. Let's take a field trip to the actual United Nations. Bear with me a moment. Here we go. United Nations. All right. Here is the United Nations. Now, what's interesting, we're just looking at this is just the home page of the United Nations. Does this follow what the Charter and the Declaration of Rights say? Right? Does it? May. It may not. But let's scroll back up. Let's go to the member states. Member states. Da, 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 da. You can see all the letter A states. So B, Bolivia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Brunei, Burundi. I find it interesting North Korea is part of this. And China is part of this. Did I see Greenland? No, okay, it was. I thought I saw Greenland. That would have been very confusing. Iran, Israel, Holy See. Where's the Holy See? I thought I was the Holy See. No, okay. Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. This is Laos. Kyrgyzstan, Luxembourg, Malawi, the Maldives, Mali, Mexico, Micronesia, Myanmar. They go by, what's interesting here, and in the English, they go by Myanmar. There's a lot of other countries which still refer to it as Burma. So that's one of those weird ones where it really depends on where in the world you are. Namibia, Nauru, Nepal, Netherlands, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Nigeria, North Macedonia, Oman, etc., etc. It's very interesting. There is, once again, a country I'm really curious about. So what we're going to do is is Kosovo part of the United Nations? Of course, you get all these different results. I'm just looking if well, let's do a quick duck. I think I'm doing duck here. I might be brave, but Kosovo UN. We're doing a brain search. Okay. Let's see what they say in Wikipedia. The United Nations Inter-Administration Mission of Kosovo. And this basically talks about how Kosovo is in a war-torn area, and it has been for a while. What you're going to notice is that Kosovo and many other countries are, they don't recognize it. They don't recognize Kosovo. Because what you're seeing, even though knowing what Kosovo is, look at this right here. Kosovo claimed by Serbia. Kosovo itself declares itself an independent country. Though it seems that Serbia claims that Kosovo. So interesting. Interesting little thing there. So I hope you guys enjoy that and a little bit of an exploration into the Declaration of Human Rights and probably what we're going to talk about next time is how a lot of these things apply to modern day. I know that I went into some minor side conversation about this, but I think we're going to go into more depth of this in the coming uh, episodes. So, anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I hope you enjoyed this and I thought it was entertaining or educational or fascinating of any shape or form if I got your fancy. Hopefully I shall be doing more of these things in the near future. And thanks for coming. I'll talk to you guys later, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Have a good night. Take care.